Steve, good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Well, I'm fine, thank you. I apologise for the lateness.
No problem.
Everybody, this is Steve Wraith. Steve has a phenomenally interesting life. He's an actor, writer, producer, promoter, podcaster. And you did actually work with the Craze. Is that correct, Steve?
It is, yeah. I mean, that's where probably my journey began. I basically wasn't the greatest of students. My mind was all focused on being an actor at school. So I felt that I didn't need to stick in at school. And it was only when I turned 14 that basically my English teacher changed at school, and they allowed me to study a different book to the books on the curriculum. So as well as studying Macbeth, 1984, I was allowed to study a book called The Profession of Violence by John Pearson, and I passed my English exam. I walked away from school with a B and a C in English language and English literature, thanks to that foresight by the teacher. So I decided to write to the Craze, and they were in prison, and I just wrote to them and said, you know, I enjoyed reading the book about your life story. I just wanted to let you know that despite you serving a life sentence, that, you know, something positive has come from the story. And they wrote back. And when I left school, had gone into making T-shirts. So I suggested to the Craze in another letter that we maybe put an image of the Craze on a T-shirt. And so my business relationship with the two most notorious gangsters in the UK began. And I had a relationship with Reggie Cray, a business relationship with Reggie Cray for the best part of 10 years. I visited him in numerous prisons up and down the UK. And I also visited Ronnie Cray over a 5-year period in Broadmoor Hospital for the criminally insane. I look back on it and think, you know, was I naive? Was I stupid? But I wasn't, because it basically made me the person I am today. I almost took all of the positive stuff that the Craze did, and they did, you know, they were good businessmen. They ran nightclubs and spielers in London.
Took care of the community. I mean, they definitely had.
I got involved in a lot of the things that they had done, but without any of the crime. As I say, some people would say it's stupid. Some people would say it's naive. But had I not got into that particular situation as a kid, I wouldn't have ended up going on to do what I've done. You know, I've gone on to write many books about the Craze. I've produced documentaries about them, and yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm a keeper of the Cray flame, but I am an expert in that particular field. I know a lot about it. I've met a lot of the characters, and how many people can pick up a book, read it, and then essentially walk through the book, meet all the major characters, and come out of the other end and say, well, I can tell you about them. And, you know, essentially that's what I did, Sonia, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Freckles says, love Steve, hope to work with him one day. I just saw a comment here. This will make you laugh, Steve. Ray Can says, Steve is a Man U fan, right? No, even I know that's not correct. What fan are you?
There's only one United, and it plays in black and white, and that's Newcastle United. I'm probably more well known for being a Newcastle fan, Sonia. It's something that my passion for football came from my late granddad, George Green, who was actually a headmaster by day, but he was a referee and a linesman in his spare time at weekends. He eventually went on to be a referee assessor, which basically means that he used to go to the games in the Northeast and sit and, you know, assess the referees. And he was the man who took me to my first football game. So I went to watch Gateshead play. I went to watch Hartlepool, Darlington, Middlesbrough. But when I went to Newcastle United, I just fell in love with the place. It was just the awe of walking into that stadium. And because my granddad was the assessor of the referees, he would be in the director's box. So I got a chance to meet the likes of Jackie Milburn and Joe Harvey and Bobby Cowell, of course. And those names, of course, are famous up here because that was in the years that Newcastle used to win trophies. We won the FA Cup in 1951, 52 and 55. Yeah. And they were the cup winners. So to meet those people was fantastic. And I think I was just blown away. And my very first game at Newcastle was Kevin Keegan's last in the testimonial game, where he flew off in a helicopter. And I thought, wow, does this happen every week? And yeah, that was it. That was my introduction to Newcastle United. I fell in love. So I've been a Newcastle fan since 1983. And I've never looked back, but I've ended up doing a lot behind the scenes. I was one of the first fanzine editors, so I used to like sit and use my dad's typewriter and then first ever word processor, and we used to produce a fanzine in the house. We had people, writing for us, doing cartoons. We produced it in the house, and then we sold it outside the ground. And then when the Sky Revolution took over, the media would approach supporters for their views, and I was always available. I was working for myself at that point. I was also working in doing security in Newcastle, and I just became somebody who was easily obtainable if somebody needed a fan's view, and that's probably how I became fairly well known in the Northeast.
Right.
I eventually worked for the club. I became the fans liaison officer. They'd never had anybody to communicate between the fans and and the club, and I was given that opportunity. So I might not have signed a contract for Newcastle as a footballer, but I did sign one as somebody involved in communications, and I was there for a couple of years. But it didn't, it wasn't what it said on the tin. I enjoyed it, but yeah, Newcastle is my club.
100%, not to be confused with Man United. Just to go to the comments. Yes. Ray says, I've heard many of Steve's stories. Good stuff. D, yes, absolutely. Craze were. They were torturers. They were violent people. I don't think Steve for a second is denying that. Not for a second. And all Steve is, because the thing is, people aren't one-dimensional either. We must remember that. And it's because in order to sort of understand those sort of mentalities, hopefully to prevent things like that happening in future, we have to penetrate beyond just the monster side, right, Steve? And I think that can be quite hard sometimes, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, look, why on earth my mindset was to go and write to this person, Reggie Cray at that time. I'll never be able to know that, but it was, I'm a great believer that your path is already mapped out. And I think that's why I did it. And as I say, for me, it led me into those other avenues, later in life, but I don't regret contacting the Crays. I mean, anybody who, has been watching The Secret of the Crays on ITV, which has been a 3-parter, the final part is on Tuesday. I've contributed to that. I contributed to the whole series behind the scenes.
Yeah, you're a recognised knowledge on this. Absolutely. Cribbage wants to know how old you are for some reason. Are you lining him up?
I turn 50 next Wednesday.
You look amazing.
Well, thank you, Sonia. Thank you.
Birthday,
so do you.
Thank you, darling. I know I do. As my daughter says, I'm hot. What a great daughter. Now, look, Steve, seriously, right? The last time I think I saw you in a movie, you were in Rise of the Foot Soldier. It might have been 3 or something, but you were being seriously beaten in prison, Steve. It was a very, very disturbing scene. So, so obviously you're in those kind of movies as well. Varied life, Steve. What was it like filming that?
Fantastic, because Rise of the Foot Soldier is a renowned franchise. So
yes.
to be included in that particular franchise was as an actor is something you enjoy. To be working alongside established actors, such as Craig Fairbrass. Was amazing, and it just gives you it's one of those pinch yourself moments when I had to go down a couple of weeks ahead of filming to do a rehearsal for the fight scene, because there's obviously I've got 2 scenes in that which are quite graphic. One where there's a fight scene in the prison, and we had to go and practice and rehearse, and it was just great to go down and work with the guys, and I couldn't have got a better commendation afterwards when the scene that you mentioned where I get hit with a pool cue. These films are obviously budgeted, and we only had two attempts at getting that right. And obviously with them hitting me from behind with a pool cue, it was all about the timing. And yeah, look, we did it in the first take. So
did you actually get hurt?
No, it was a balsa wood. It's a balsa wood like pool cue, so it didn't hurt at all, which makes it harder, because if it was something that was actually going to hurt you, then you would react accordingly. But obviously, with it being balsa wood, then you've got to act, and that was the big challenge. But I'm pleased to say I did it in 1 take. We did the second take for posterity and to make sure that that everything was fine. But Craig came up to me at the end and said that was brilliant.
I mean, that is amazing, isn't it? Skippy says, get out, Steve, check your birth certificate, mate. And Freckles and Craig are having a love-in about Rise of the Foot Soldier and saying how I love those movies. I've really enjoyed them. Obviously, of course, you're also behind Bad Boy Books. As I say, Steve is he's an octopus. His career is an octopus. In fact, in his bio, it says Steve is in his 40s, actually heading for 50, and still doesn't know what he wants to be when he grows up. But tell us about Bad Boy Books, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I've obviously got a passion for writing, which which started, I guess, with the whole craze scenario. But yeah, I've been lucky enough to write a few books, which I've always wanted to do. Mainly northeast orientated, though. There's a well-known family in Newcastle called the Sonias family. They're quite notorious.
Yes.
3 brothers all went into crime, and that was a book that I really wanted to do. And by chance, through my connections and in door work and doing security, I got a chance to meet the family. And as time progressed, I put it to them about doing a book. They didn't want to do it, but then they were, basically mentioned in a couple of books in the Northeast, and they thought, we want to have a right to reply. So that book is my bestseller, tried and tested at the highest level, the Sears. And I've gone on to write, write the movie script now, which is, the budget has now been, we've now agreed the budget for that, and we're hoping to bring in some finance for that in the next couple of months. So that should hit the big screen, we're hoping, next year. But yeah, the book side of things, I've done many. I've done Paul Ferris, the wee man. I did a book with him, the Unfinished Business. I did a book about Paul Massey, obviously an infamous criminal in Manchester, a Salford Heart from the family's perspective. And I've worked with a couple of other well-known inmates, I guess. Charles Salvador. I bizarrely did a poetry and art book with him. I'd written some poetry, he'd written some poetry, and we decided to combine it and put it together. So that's gone well. And numerous books on the craze. The craze book of slang is probably the one that I take the most pride in, because it was a rehash of an idea that Reg had actually done in the 1990s. He'd brought a book out of Cockney slang. So I suggested to my eldest daughter, if she wanted to make a little bit of money, that we could do a book together. And at the time, she was only 12. She rose to the challenge. I set her a target of finding some new Cockney rhyme and slang, because it's obviously changed, and she grasped it with both hands. So yeah, we co-wrote the book together. I put in over 50 new photographs of the craze, which I own, which had never been seen before. And yeah, the book still sells well to this day. But it was a moment of pride for me to bring a book out with my daughter, and she learned that you have to work hard to earn your money.
Yeah, that's a great lesson to teach children. It's a good thing to teach them about a strong work ethic. Chris says, wow, how does he fit it all in? So prolific. Well, he is. And the thing is, though, is that Steve is a very passionate individual and passionate about what he does. And you can feel that. And that makes the difference, Steve. I mean, you are so incredibly busy. And I think you've also started an online show as well, haven't you?
Yeah, the podcast is on YouTube. Basically, just search Steve Wraith and you can subscribe there. Predominantly, it is Newcastle United, content. We do a show called NUFC Matters. I do seven shows a week, one each day, and they're varied. They have different people on, different presenters, ex-players, journalists, supporters. We've mixed it up. But I also do one a week with just an invited guest. I've done a lot of true crime, which has involved people who've either been involved in crime and then turned over a new leaf and have a great story to tell, or sadly people who've gone the opposite way and who've ended up in crime after leading a very successful life. But I guess the most successful interviews I've done or controversial ones I've done have been with the likes of David Icke. I mean, that was great, but I didn't get David to come on and talk about the things that people would expect me to ask him about. I got him on to talk about football, and even he was pleasantly surprised, because he didn't ask for questions to be forwarded. I just got him on and we talked about Newcastle United. I was aware that he was actually a substitute goalkeeper for Hereford when Hereford beat Newcastle in the FA Cup. And he was amazed that I asked him that. And he said, yeah, he says, I wasn't, because in those days you could only have one substitute. And he was actually sitting in the stand watching it. I also knew that he'd commentated on Keegan's debut for Newcastle. So we asked him about that, but it was fascinating. And that's probably one of the most successful interviews I've done recently as well. I just interviewed the world's strongest man, Tom Stoltman, who's from Scotland.
Wow.
Who's autistic. And he's had his battles with autism, and it was a fascinating story. It's a great story of personal conquest that he's gone through to get where he is. But yeah, fascinating story. But I just love it. I did it during lockdown, Sonia. We obviously touched base during lockdown as well, and did something together. Yeah. And I just felt, once lockdown had eased and the pandemic had started to drift away and things were starting to get back to what you would call relative normality, I thought, well, people have loved it now. I went from about 11,000 subscribers to about 46,500 over that period.
Go on, Steve.
You feel you owe a bit of loyalty to these people, Sonia, and I do enjoy doing it. What's an hour out of my day to talk to people, you know?
Absolutely. Everybody. It is the multi-talented Steve Wraith, actor, writer, producer, promoter, podcaster, and all-round good egg. I'll put a link in the description to Steve's channels, to Steve's work. Thanks ever so much for joining us this morning, Steve. Lovely to see you.
Take care. Keep up the good work, Sonia. I love your work.
You too. You too,
Bye.
darling. Take care. Bye.